From claims of healings and visions to the world's most inexplicable events, whether you're a believer or a skeptic, the truth is always worth the hunt.
EWTN Radio presents The Miracle Hunter with Michael O'Neill.
Welcome to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. And this is a big week in the Miracle Hunter world anyway. We have the debut of the second season of the Explore with the Miracle Hunter series on EWTN, which airs every Saturday at 5 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Eastern. Of course, that's my travel series where I go all around the world to the greatest places of miracles in the entire Catholic world. And we have beautiful drone footage and 4K on-site photography and some amazing recreations. And I'm so excited to bring some of these lesser-known stories to the screen. And one of those is for today's date. We've got Explore with the Miracle Hunter Banneux, and I'll be investigating a stunning Marian apparition in Belgium of 11-year-old Mariette Becco, who witnessed 8 visions of the Virgin of the Poor, who promised to intercede for the poor, sick, and suffering. And that airs tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. So excited to present that. And relatedly, we're going to be talking today with Father Edward Looney. He's going to be talking to us about those apparitions in Banneux, and you'll get a little bit of a background on what you're going to tune in for tonight with that new episode of Explore with the Miracle Hunter. But I'm so excited to get 7 new episodes coming out, and next week's episode actually is Explore Rome, and of course there are many miracles and many things of the Catholic world in Rome, but we'll be focusing on Our Lady of the Snows in that episode, and also the apparition to Alphonse Ratisbonne, that incredible conversion of an atheistic Jew who had a vision of the Virgin Mary and ended up becoming a Catholic priest as a result. So we have sort of a double episode coming up in 2 weeks. And we're going to be joined today by Father David Uribe, who's the rector of the Shrine of Our Lady of the Snows here in the United States in Belleville, Illinois, that national shrine. And so he'll be joining us to give some of the backstory about Our Lady of the Snows. So I'm so excited to talk to him in just a little bit. And we've been talking a lot about Eucharistic miracles these days. For people who are interested in finding out more about that, you can check out my new book, Science and the Miraculous, How the Catholic Church Investigates the Supernatural. It's out from 10 Books and available at EWTNRC.com. Check that one out. You'll be looking into the Church's rigorous investigation into miraculous occurrences, including Eucharistic miracles. So I encourage you to check that one out. And I'm so excited to announce the pilgrimage coming up to Poland and Lithuania. You can journey with me on a special pilgrimage there, celebrating Pope John Paul II, and we'll be exploring places of miracles like Legwanichi, where St. Faustina experienced the Divine Mercy visions, Czestochowa, home of the famous icon of the Virgin Mary, Jasna Gora, as she's called, the renowned sites of Polish church-approved Marian apparitions like Giertzwald, Lichin, and Suluva in Lithuania, and we'll be going to the 2 most recent Eucharistic miracle locations in Sokolka and Legnica. And of course, as I mentioned, Krakow and all the JP2 sites. People can join me there on April 21st through May 1st. You can go to pilgrimages.com/miraclehunter to sign up, and we'll be filming new episodes of Explore with the Miracle Hunter on that trip as well, so you'll get some behind the scenes of some of these new episodes coming to you from Poland and Lithuania. Check that out, pilgrimages.com/miraclehunter to join the trip next April. Later in the show today, we're going to be looking at the 365 Days with Mary project like we always do. For November 12th, we'll be looking at the icon of the Mother of God of Ozherenkaya from Ukraine in the 7th century. And the might-be saint of the day is Blessed Giovanni Cini del Pace, who lived from 1270 to 1335 in Italy. His feast day is today on November 12th. And we'll also be looking at the question of the week. It's an interesting one. What about the weeping statue in Hobbs, New Mexico? Are there any updates? So I'll try to answer that question in just a little bit. Let's take a look at the miracle news. We do this every week where we talk about the miracles happening all around the world and those things that relate to miracles. And we love reporting on these things like Marian apparitions and Eucharistic miracles and all these famous healing miracles, perhaps, that catch the attention of the Catholic world. But I think we've all had small miracles, maybe lowercase m miracles in our lives. And there was one similar to that reported recently on Catholic News. And so the headline is, "The Woman Thanks God When a Lost Wedding Ring is Found After a Hurricane." So a Florida mother lost her wedding ring just before Hurricane Ian, and she never thought she would see it again, but God knew better. So when Ashley Garner lost her wedding ring a few days before Hurricane Ian came through the neighborhood, she never thought she would see it again. And the mother of three, she misplaced her ring outside her home in Fort Myers, Florida. And at first she searched everywhere for it, and with the help of her husband and kids, and they went through all the yard and all the garage. But when the hurricane on its way, it seemed impossible that the ring would stay in the yard with the 150-mile-an-hour winds, and Gardner tried to accept that it was gone for good. And she told NBC News that, "I just accepted that it was gone. It was only an object, a thing. It's replaceable. I just let it go. We knew the hurricane was coming, so it kind of just said goodbye." And it turned out there was a surprise. So when the hurricane passed through the neighborhood, it left huge piles of trees and brush throughout the area. And Garner was outside in her yard cleaning the brush piles with her family when her husband found something really incredible. 10 minutes into the cleaning, her husband spotted the ring under a pile of brush and trees, and it was a joyful surprise that she didn't even think to hope for. And we just sat on the curb praying to God and thanked him for providing and giving us a sign that there's hope for our community. So that's just a fun story, a woman finding her wedding ring after Hurricane Ian. But for some of the bigger miracle news, you can connect to the Facebook feed of The Miracle Hunter, and you can find out miracles happening all around the world and those things that relate to miracles. And let's take a look at Catholic Pub Trivia. Each week I ask a trivia question and give out a prize to an emailer who writes in the fastest with the right answer. People who know me, my friends, know that I love trivia, so you might find me at a trivia night once in a while as they come up. But this is Catholic Pub Trivia, and last week we talked with Purgatory Lady Susan Tassone. And so you can connect to that interview if you go through the app, the EWTN app, or go to the EWTN website. You can look at the audio archives. And so we talked about Purgatory last week. Of course, this is the November, the month of the Holy Souls. And so last week we asked the question, name any of the 5 Bible verses that are most commonly interpreted as referencing purgatory. And you only needed one, but we had in 2 Maccabees, chapter 12, verse 41 to 46, Timothy chapter 1, Matthew chapter 12, verse 32, Luke 23:43, and Corinthians 3:11. Those are some of the very common places that people point to that where there's prayer for the dead, and that doesn't make sense. If there's no purgatory, why would we pray for the dead anyway? So if they're just in heaven or hell, in their permanent resting places. So those are places where you see prayer for the dead in the Bible. And thanks for everyone who wrote in with those answers. And so for this week, we're going to be talking today with Father David Uribe, the rector of Our Lady of the Snows Shrine in Belleville, Illinois. And that's the subject of this upcoming week's episode of Explore with the Miracle Hunter, where I travel to Rome. And so in that episode, we talk about the miraculous backstory of St. Mary Major, which is one of only 4 major basilicas in the entire Catholic world. And the question for today is, name the other 3. So St. Mary Major is one of the only 4 major basilicas in all of the world. Name the other 3. And if you think you know that answer and want to win the prize, the Faces of Mary, send me an email through my website, miraclehunter.com, and answers and winners will be posted on the show page on miraclehunter.com. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to be talking with Father David Uribe, the rector of the Shrine of Our Lady of Snows in Belleville, Illinois. He'll tell us the miraculous backstory for that original shrine in Rome. Stay with us for that.
Now, back to the Miracle Hunter on EWTN. Here's Michael O'Neill.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. One of the things that we talk about when we talk about miracles is the impact they've had on the world. And we talk about things like sacramentals, perhaps the rosary given to St. Dominic in the year 1206, or St. Simon Stock receiving the brown scapular, or St. Juan Diego receiving the tilma of Our Lady of Guadalupe, or the miraculous medal received by St. Catherine Labouré. And we also talk about the influence that they've had as far as building of churches around the world. Believe it or not, there have been many miracles that have resulted in churches, and some very big ones at that. And I think 5 of the largest largest 12 churches in the world have sort of a miraculous backstory where, as a result of a Marian apparition or other miracle, it went on to house a church in that location. And one of the most famous cases in all of Christian history, and maybe one of the very early ones, relates to Our Lady of the Snows. There was a miracle there, perhaps a Marian apparition, or we might want to say just a miracle of snow that led to the building of St. Mary Major, one of the four papal basilicas or major basilicas found in Rome. And so we're so excited today because we're coming up on next week's program. We'll be having a new episode of Explore with the Miracle Hunter, where I'll be visiting Rome and telling the story of St. Mary Major, as well as the apparitions received by Alphonse Ratisbonne, also in Rome. And so we're excited today to talk with someone from the rector of the Shrine of Our Lady of the Snows in the United States, and that is Father David Uribe. And the shrine is in Belleville, Illinois. Welcome to the program today, Father David.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, this is kind of an exciting devotion. I think that many Americans don't know that, despite us having a very large shrine, your shrine here in Belleville, Illinois. And I've been to your shrine myself, being an Illinois guy myself. So we're excited today to talk about this. But I think that people should know more about this Our Lady of the Snows devotion. And it's celebrated every August 5th in Rome with the drop of white rose petals at St. Mary Major. So it's celebrated even to this day, even though it dates back to the 4th century. So let's just dial it back a little bit. What happened, according to pious tradition, with Our Lady of the Snows?
Yes, well, every time our Heavenly Mother intervenes with us in some fashion, it is always around some type of event or, happenings that are going about. And back in the 4th century, of course, what was real prominent at the time, at least what they were getting over, was the persecution of Christians. From the time of Jesus, the time of the apostles, the Romans and the Jewish authorities were going after anybody who was following the footsteps of Jesus of Nazareth, and trying to disprove that he was the Son of God and the Messiah. And so it was an immediate threat to the Jewish authorities, of course, and more importantly, to Rome. And Rome wanted to crush anything that was so powerful. And so, of course, that it led to the destruction of the temple in the year 70. At least for the Romans to get that control of the Jews, and then as well. So the persecution had happened ever since then. And a lot of it was that, Christians were being thrown into the underground church, into the crypts, into the different places where they could gather in secret and they can gather in prayer and, to celebrate, the Eucharist in memory of Jesus as he asked, and of course all the blessings and all the prayers and all the just the communities that could form together. And so if you imagine that was the reality for the Christians for the first, 2.5 centuries, then that, was in its sense, was a lot of prayer going up to God to be liberated from this persecution to being sought out by the Romans. So when we get up to the year about the year 323 to 24 to 325, when finally a Roman emperor finally was more of a businessman, and he said, we've spent too much time and energy and effort and certainly finances to get rid of these followers of Jesus, these Christians as they were already known. And so, they finally, as a businessman, he said, let's just do away with this. Let's just tax them and allow them to, practice their faith and just religious freedom on their part. And so when he put out an edict in the empire that said that Christians are now allowed to, they'll be able to pay a tax just to do what they wanted to do, and they can practice freely. Well, for the Christian community, that was an answer to many, many prayers for many, many decades and of course, centuries, for them to be liberated from that. So in the expression for them to, really express this new faith that they're able to give glory to God and to build the church that they really wanted to, they wanted to go to the heart of the empire, and that's Rome. And so in Rome, that is where they wanted to build the great churches, especially in the great testaments of the apostles. So they knew that they could build a church for St. Peter, right where he was buried on Vatican Hill. So that's where we have the present church for the Basilica of St. Peter. Then they wanted to go to find St. Paul, where he was buried and just outside the wall. And so there we have the great Basilica Church of St. Paul. Then the Lateran family had a place, at time and resources that they had property as well, where they wanted to build a church as well. And so that's St. John Lateran. to be dedicated as a cathedral, as what we know as a cathedral today for the Diocese of Rome. Well, they came together and they said, we want to build a great church in honor of Mary. And so at that time, 325, 326, they said, well, Mary, the other places had physical locations within the city to build these great churches in the glory of God for all that God has done, and now that they're able to express their faith even more so, that they're able to go forth and do that. So they wanted to build this church in honor of Mary. And so what they did was, at the time, the successor of Peter just said, let's put it into prayer, and so they put it into prayer. And it wasn't until about 30 years later, we believe in the year 358, that this childless couple, who were great Marian devotees, great faith in Christ and in the church. They had been praying for a long time to find this place for this church. Well, the gentleman falls asleep, and this is August the 4th of the year 358. And so he falls asleep, and in his sleep he has a dream where Mary sends a message and says, where there is snow, build my church there. So I'm sure that he got up in the morning. As everybody knows, August is the hottest month in Rome, and it is the warmest. Even the Romans, they leave the city and they go up into the mountains and they go to other places where they can experience a cooler month. So he probably got up in the morning and just said, we'll look for snowfall. The next snowfall, wherever that falls, that's where we'll look. Well, he began to hear chatter on the roadside, outside the houses in the roads, that there was a snowfall on a small hill, the Esquiline Hill, there in Rome. And so he and his wife went out and they looked and they wanted to witness it, because he knew that in his dream that Mary had given that message: where there is snow, build my church. Well, as soon as they got to the spot, and sure enough, there was snow on the ground, that's where he began to tell people that he had received this message from Mary. At the same time, the successor of Peter, which is Liberius, he also showed up at the place, because he had also heard about this miracle snowfall, and he began to express the same thing as well. Mary said to me in a dream that where there is snowfall, that this is the place to build the church. And as they all came together, and as legend shows, it's Liberius who is there, who's outlining the outer walls of the church and what we know today as St. Mary Major. And so we give credit to the snowfall because of what Mary had indicated to these two faithful folks, and more importantly to the people of God. But more importantly, that when the churches are built, that's just verification that God wants the graces that come with everything that a temple church brings about, that is always going to be a site where God gives his blessings and graces to his people. And so this is what we believe, and this is what we continue to honor in the fact that Mary, in speaking for God, is that we can certainly build these churches in which we can bring about the graces that God wants. And so we, in a month that's very, very contrary to what, the snowfall can bring, that this is what that means. And this is why we celebrate the miracle snowfall, even to today, within the St. Mary Major Church, where we have the falling of the white rose petals from the top.
Absolutely. We've been talking today with Father David Uribe, giving this amazing story, this backstory of the building of St. Mary Major. And as he just mentioned, that every August 5th, that's celebrated in Rome, where they drop these white rose petals from the ceiling. And in the new episode of Explore with the Miracle Hunter, which airs next Saturday, November 19th at 5 p.m. Central Time, we actually have footage from Rome where we show these white rose petals descending in celebration of this traditional miracle that's been celebrated over the centuries, and it's known as Our Lady of the Snows, and that comprises half of the episode that will be airing. And we have some beautiful recreations where we actually show Pope Liberius having this dream, and John and his wife having this dream, and then meeting at the top of this hill in Rome and seeing the outline in snow. So I encourage people to check that one out next Saturday, November 19th at 5 p.m. Central Time, Explore with the Miracle Hunter. And this is not just a devotion that stays in Rome, stays in Italy. Here in the United States, we have a national shrine of Our Lady of the Snows in Belleville, Illinois. I've been there myself. I'm an Illinois guy myself, and so I've traveled there and been to that shrine, which is a very well-developed shrine. There's just about everything that a pilgrim would want when they're visiting a shrine. Talk to us a little bit, Father David. How did this shrine come to be in Belleville, Illinois?
Sure. Yeah, we are located in Belleville, Illinois, just right outside of St. Louis, Missouri. We're just about 15 minutes east of downtown St. Louis, just crossing the Mississippi River, which makes it, Illinois. And so how it started was we had a missionary priest, and, we are part of the Missionary Oblates of Mary Immaculate, a religious order of priests and brothers that founded the shrine here in Belleville. And it came from this one missionary oblate who was from Germany, and he was in the seminary when the first war broke out in Europe. And so, at that time when seminaries are about and the war begins and war declared, the seminaries are emptied and everybody is enrolled into the military. And so we got this Paul Schulte, who was in that reality. So in the First World War, one of the major advances, one of the major technology that was there was planes, and how to use planes, in the effort to win a war. So he trained as a pilot for the German army, and did his time during the war. When the war was over, he returned to the seminary. This time, he returned to join the missionary oblates. And so, when he went to the seminary, he had these hopes and dreams to go to the missions in Africa. When he was close to ordination, he got his obedience, and instead of Africa, he ended up in the Arctic, Canadian Arctic, and that was his first order. So after getting ordained, he got on a boat from Europe and headed over to Montreal. Landed there, was oriented about what he was going to do, and then got on his docks. He says, "You're going to be a missionary to the missions that we have in the Arctic." And so he was like, "Okay, where's my vehicle?" And they said, no vehicle. You get a dog sleigh, and you get a brother who is going to accompany you." And so he did. He got on a dog sleigh and he began to travel north from Montreal to the first mission. It took him about a month to get there, and then stayed there for about a month to do what he needed to do, and then he was on to the next mission, which took him another 3 to 4 weeks to get to. And in his mind, he's saying, "This is crazy. I'm a pilot. There are a number of surplus planes that are out on the fields in Europe. I'm going to ask the Oblates if they can purchase one and have them bring it over." So that happened. So he was able to get a plane over, and he was able to fly from his the different missions. And instead of taking 3 to 4 weeks to travel, it now just took 1 to 2 days to travel through. And so he spent this time up in the Canadian. So we have a map about all the missions that he founded and that he had all along the Arctic coast, and there were a number of them. Well, he had a great devotion to Our Lady of the Snows, and how appropriate now in this reality where there's a lot of snow that he would always pray to her, and he named his mission there after Our Lady of the Snows. So what happened was that he was doing just fine, and so this is in the 30s and whatnot. Well, war broke out again in 1938 in Europe, this time with the Nazi regime. And by 1941, there was a lot of suspicion with the Canadian authorities, and of course with the Germans, with the Nazi regime, that they would come into North America. And so it just so happened that Father Schulte was at a mission one day. He was right off the coast, and on his radio, he started to get some messages in German. And he himself, as a German, wanted to hear it. So he responded to one, these messages, and it turned out to be a Nazi submarine just off the coast. Well, at the same time, the Canadian authorities also picked it up, and so they realized that there was a connection there. So the big threat was that the Nazis would come into North America either from the north or from the south, from Mexico or from Canada. And so when the Canadian authorities approached him, they found out that this missionary oblate had these mapped out all this Arctic notion with missions, and they could. And as a former soldier for the German, he became a threat to the Canadian authorities. And so they approached him. They did this research. they realized that they needed to expel him from that because he could easily be influenced. He kept insisting, I'm a Catholic priest. I'm here to do the Lord's work. I'm here to do all these things. And so they only gave him 2 days to escape, to leave Canada. So they expelled him from Canada. He didn't know where to go. So what happened was that he just looked on the map for the oblates and realized that Belleville, Illinois, was the next concentration of oblates that he could join. And so he got on a train, or I believe, and ended up in Belleville. So this is of April of 1941. And that's where he came. When he came here to Belleville, the American authorities found out who he was, and as well they were alerted by the Canadian authorities. And so when he came here, he was put under house arrest at a seminary that we had here in Belleville at the time, St. Henry Seminary. So the rector at the time decided that what he could do since he's under house arrest is just to respond to the letters for the donors and whatnot. And so there's only so many ways you can say thank you to the donors. And so he asked the superior if he could write about his stories about the missions that he had and the great devotion that he had to Our Lady of the Snows. And so the rector gave him permission. And each time he wrote a letter and put a story and put more information about Our Lady and the devotion that he had and the different mission stories, more mail would come in. He'd write another story, more mail would come in. And all of a sudden you had this donor base, for the seminary who wanted to hear more stories about Our Lady of the Snows and whatnot. At the same time in the community, there was another priest, Father Edwin Guild, and he saw that this could turn into a great devotion and also a shrine. And so that's the beginnings of the shrine, was that it began through a mail campaign to just letters, but people just hungry for the word, and more importantly, hungry for the devotion to Our Lady of the Snows. Who is this Our Lady of the Snows? And so it all happened with just this German priest, missionary, oblate, just, being at the wrong place at the wrong time, coming from the wrong place because of the situation that's coming out. But then what happened was he did come here with Father Edwin. The both of them decided that they would build a shrine at the seminary, and then they immediately started a novena, and the novena became very, very popular, and where thousands of people were drawn in, especially in the month of August, to come in to really celebrate this devotion that they had for Our Lady of the Snows. And the current location of the shrine right now was built, started in 1958, and it started with the grotto here, and then immediately was built for an outdoor amphitheater church, and that's what we have that was built in the 1960s. And that's with the big crowds that we had back in the days. People would come on devotion, and they would come on pilgrimage to really be part of the celebration of Our Lady of the Snows, and more importantly, that Our Lady who's always protected, especially in difficult circumstances, that Our Lady would always bring in this hope and especially the healing that people would always respond to. And so here we have this national shrine. It is the largest outdoor shrine in North America, and so we do have lots. It's about 90 acres of lots of different places, devotions. We certainly have a mass schedule. There's confessions every day. We're well known here to have people to come in from lots of different places to come and receive the sacrament of reconciliation, but then as well as to be part of the programming that we have as well throughout the year.
Wonderful. Well, we're so grateful to you, Father David Uribe, for giving us the fascinating backstory of the Shrine of Our Lady of the Snows in Belleville, Illinois. And people can learn more about that and visit the shrine. And you have a great website, or a great URL. It's snows.org, which is a great way to get connected to your site. And how can people find out more? What's the best way for people to visit your shrine?
Yeah, certainly by visiting our website. We've got lots of information there, snows.org, snows.org, or you can call our main number directly, and that's 618-397-6700. And so you can call and just continue to just ask the questions. We have lots of different services, and then, especially during this time of the year, we begin with our Way of Lights, which is a journey to Bethlehem. And so we turn this large acreage into lots of different, we put up so many lights, over 1.5 million lights, to really represent that journey to Jerusalem. Our grotto turns into the nativity scene, and we have lots of different activities and whatnot, and that's been a tradition for over 50 years called the Shrine Way of Life. And so it's a family tradition. We welcome everybody, especially at this time of the year.
Well, this is a great time of year to go visit the Shrine of Our Lady of the Snows in Belleville, Illinois, outside St. Louis. People can find out more at snows.org. Thank you so much, Father David Uribe, for joining us on today's program.
Thank you for having me.
God bless. That was Father David Uribe from the National Shrine of Our Lady of the Snows in Belleville, Illinois. Sounds like they have some beautiful things planned, as is the tradition around this Christmas season. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to be looking at the question of the week. What about that weeping statue in Hobbs, New Mexico? Any updates? Stay with us for that.
Now, back to the Miracle Hunter on EWTN. Here's Michael O'Neill.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. I love getting your questions. People write in from around the world with questions about miracles happening in today's world and those that have happened centuries ago. And I love getting people's questions. I like to see what people are thinking about, especially in the miracle realm. And I do enjoy it when I give presentations around the country. And at the end of a 45-minute presentation or so, I open it up to questions. And the last few times I've given talks in recent weeks, I've actually had to stop the questions, and because there were so many. It's so great. We had 20 or 30 questions after each of these talks. People are just so fascinated to know about miracles, and I do my best to try to answer them. So for people who are interested in having me out to their parish or their conference as a speaker, you can connect on the Facebook page, or just go to miraclehunter.com and click the Contact tab, and you can send me an email that way. For this week's question, we have a question from Stan. He said, "Hi, Michael. I came across your website as I'm doing research on the supernatural." Oh, very good. "And events cannot be ordinarily explained by science. One of the things that caught my eye is the Crying Virgin statue in Our Lady of Guadalupe Catholic Church in Hobbs, New Mexico. What are your thoughts on this phenomenon? Do you consider it a miracle in and of itself? Thank you, Stan." Well, thanks, Stan, for that great question. For people who want to find out more about this weeping statue in Hobbs, New Mexico, you can find it actually on the Washington Post. This was reported there. Or you can pick up a copy of my book called Science and the Miraculous, which is my new book out from 10 books, available at EWTN Religious Catalog, EWTNRC.com. And I have a section on there on weeping statues, and I feature this bronze statue that was made in Mexico, and it was installed in a church, Our Lady of Guadalupe Church, appropriately in Hobbs, New Mexico, and it wept on 4 occasions. And you can actually go on YouTube and you can see this statue actively crying. We have all these stories of hundreds and hundreds of statues over the centuries crying, but you don't have many cases of videos capturing it, and this is one of those very rare cases. So I actually traveled to Mexico, and during one of my trips there, I went to the foundry that created this statue, and there they call her La Milagrosa, the miracle worker, because they've made hundreds or thousands of similar bronze statues over the years. And this is the only one that cries. And so authorities have checked the internal ductwork of that statue. They've checked for a leaky pipe above the statue, and checked for a hoax or foul play, and none of that's in play. And so even the local bishop from the Diocese of Las Cruces in New Mexico, he gave his approval to this as saying it's without natural explanation. They don't know why it happened. And of course, one of the very interesting, tricky things with weeping statues is we don't know the true meaning of a weeping statue. We can sort of impute a meaning to this. And of course, we might say that any time we were to see our mother crying, that's a sign that we need to reflect on our own lives and perhaps return to prayer and in a life of faith. But when it comes to the actual just science of this case, of the weeping statue in Hobbs, there is no natural explanation for it, as said by the local bishop. So do I consider this a miracle? Absolutely. I think this is a very modern miracle, which happened on 4 occasions, captured on YouTube and reported in the Washington Post. So it's one of these very modern cases of a miracle that we have captured on film. So I encourage people to check that one out. You can go to miraclehunter.com or just pick up my book, Science and the Miraculous, to find out more about this incredible phenomena. So thanks, Stan, for your question. And if you have a question for the Miracle Hunter, send me an email to miraclehunter@EWTN.com, or just go to my website, miraclehunter.com, and click the Contact tab, and you can send me a message, and maybe I'll be answering your question on the air next week. Let's take a look at the 365 Days with Mary project. For today's date, November 12th, we've got the icon of the Mother of God of Ozor-Yanka in Ukraine in the 17th century. And the story goes that in the 17th century at Ozor-Yanka, about 15 miles outside of Kharkiv in Ukraine, an icon appeared. And the image had resided in the Kuzak Transfiguration Monastery on Cold Hill overlooking Kharkiv, being taken in procession to Ozor-Yanka for a 2-week period. And it's widely considered to be a miraculous statue by both Catholics and Orthodox, Ukrainians and Russians. There was a woman who was healed of blindness in her youth when the icon was illuminated in the monastery. In 1896, the Ozor-Yanka church was built in a hybrid-style Russian-domed Roman basilica along the procession route. And when the icon disappeared with its jewels in 1926, the procession stopped as well. And the Orthodox feast day of the Ozor-Yanka icon is on November 12th, formerly October 30th in the old calendar. Let's take a look at the Might Be Saint of the Day. We do this every week where we look at those on the path to sainthood. We're talking about servants of God, venerables, and blesseds before they have all their miracles and end up being declared a saint. And so we are talking from miracle workers to martyrs to those ordinary people who live extraordinary lives of heroic virtue. These are the people that make us wonder if someday they might be saints. And of course, this connects with my television series on EWTN, which airs on Fridays at 4 p.m. Central Time. And the Might Be Saint of the Day for today is Blessed Giovanni Cini del Pace. And he lived from 1270 to 1335 in Italy. And his feast day is today, November 12th. And so Blessed Giovanni, he was born in 1270 in Pisa in Italy, and he was a soldier in the army of the Republic of Pisa. And he was a little bit wild by nature, and he was imprisoned at one point for a 1296 attack on Archbishop Theodoric Rainier of Pisa. And while serving his time, Giovanni had a deep conversion experience, and when he was released, he became a Franciscan tertiary and concentrated on a life of penance. Beginning in 1305, he led the Pious House of Mercy, which is a charity devoted to the poorest of the poor, and he began the practice of taking food and alms under cover of darkness to people who were ashamed of their poverty and wouldn't come out to get the supplies. And so Giovanni later became a hermit at the Porta della Pace in Pisa, and his reputation for piety attracted several young men as they would become his spiritual students, and he organized them into the Fratercelli, or Franciscan Tertiary Hermits, a congregation that has since gone extinct. And he spent his final years in a walled community near Porta, and he received communion and water, giving spiritual advice. And he died in 1335 in a hermit's cell by the Church of Santa Maria del Sambuca in Pisa of natural causes, and he's buried there in a cemetery in Pisa. And he was declared venerable, and then he was declared blessed on September 10th, 1857 by Pope Pius IX in a confirmation of his cultus. And that's Blessed Giovanni Cini della Pace from Italy. And for more information on this fascinating future saint and any other Might Be Saints, go to theymightbesaints.com. And this week on They Might Be Saints, which airs every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, on Friday, November 18th, we've got the first episode that was ever aired of They Might Be Saints, which is of Sister Marie de Montgrance, a French nun who traveled to Turkey in search of the house of the Virgin Mary in Ephesus. It's an amazing story, sort of behind the scenes, a little bit of an Indiana Jones-style mystery, finding that house that's been recognized by many as the original House of Mary. So check that one out. They Might Be Saint Sister Marie de Montgrance, which airs next Friday, November 18th at 4 p.m. Central Time. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll be talking with Father Edward Looney about the apparitions at Banneux in Belgium in 1933. Stay with us for that.
Now, back to the Miracle Hunter on EWTN. Here's Michael O'Neill.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. People who tune into EWTN know that there's a new season of Explore with the Miracle Hunter that airs tonight, starting at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and will air on every Saturday at that same time for the next few weeks. We've been waiting a long time for the second season to air, and here we are. And the very first episode that we'll be airing will be about Our Lady of Banneux in Belgium. And I'll be investigating this amazing Marian apparition that happened to an 11-year-old girl named Mariette Becco, who witnessed 8 visions of the Virgin Mary under the title of the Virgin of the Poor. And she promised to intercede for the poor, sick, and suffering. So this is a great time to talk about this. And most people aren't aware of these apparitions. Of course, we all know Fatima, Lourdes, and Guadalupe, but in 1932 and 1933, there were 2 back-to-back apparitions in Borang in Belgium and also Banneux in Belgium. And so that was Belgium was the center of Marian apparitions for perhaps a decade. There were so many follow-up claims after that as well. So we're so excited today to talk with one of our favorite guests, and that's Father Edward Looney from the Diocese of Green Bay. And he's the author of numerous Catholic books, including How They Love Mary, which has a reference in this book to Our Lady of Banneux as well. Welcome back to the show, Father Edward.
Yeah, great to be with you, Michael. And I love Our Lady of Banneux, and I love Our Lady of Borang as well in Belgium, and I love Marian apparitions all the same.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating apparition, and I think that we have the story of 11-year-old Mariette Becco, who witnessed 8 visions of the Virgin of the Poor, and this is one of the most highly recognized modern Marian apparitions we have. Perhaps there are as many as 10 since Our Lady of Guadalupe that have this level of recognition, but in the 20th century, you've only got 4, with Borang and Banneux and Cabejo and Fatima as being the 4 that have some sort of Vatican recognition. So this is a big deal that Mary was said to appear in 1933 in Banneux. So let's just dial it back a little bit. People may not know the story of Our Lady of Banneux. What can you tell us about those visions received by Mariette Becco?
Yeah, it's a fascinating story, I think, and partly because it happens right on the heels of these Marian apparitions that took place in Borang, Belgium. So in Borang, the apparitions began November 30th of 1932 and end on January 3rd of 1933. There were 33 apparitions total, and 5 kids saw Our Lady. And so then it comes to January 15th, and Mariette Becco is this young girl. She's in her home. Her family is there. Her mother's in the living room, and her family isn't really a practicing Catholic family. Actually, I believe her father was a member of the Communist Party or something along those lines, kind of some renegade group in the country. And so Mariette Becco's there standing. She's looking out a window, whether it's the kitchen window or the living room window, and she sees a woman outside. And she tells her mother this. She says, "There's this lady, and she's beautiful." And her mother says, "Well, maybe it's the Blessed Virgin." No, she said that scoffingly. She didn't say that seriously or with great belief that her daughter was seeing Our Lady. And in fact, it was the Blessed Mother. And I think one of the beautiful things about this very first apparition and the other apparitions of Our Lady of Banneux is that she smiles. And so just as we have like Our Lady of the Smile with St. Therese of Lisieux, you have the smile of Our Lady. And I think that's just something for us to think about, to pray about sometimes. Like, does Our Lady smile at me? When I pray the rosary, just envision Our Lady smiling at us, her children. So it goes on, and so then the second apparition takes place on January 18th. And Mariette Becco, again, sees this woman at around 7 o'clock in the evening. She goes out, and this time she follows the lady. The lady is leading her. And the lady takes her to this spring of water. So we think of Our Lady of Lourdes and how there was a miraculous spring of water. There's already this water there. And so Our Lady says that, "Put your hands in this water. This fountain is reserved for me. Good night, goodbye." And later Our Lady will say that this water is reserved to bring comfort to the sick and for all the nations. So water is going to have a very significant impact on this apparition. And then you have also, too, the request for a chapel and Mary identifying herself as the Virgin of the Poor. So all of these things, maybe one of the great comforting messages, Mary says, "I've come to alleviate suffering." And we know people who suffer. And I think that's a message from Our Lady of Banneux that can really resonate with us in our own pain and difficulty and suffering. Something very similar to Borang and Banneux was the fact that Our Lady always said, pray very much. And so you have that. She says that several times in this apparition, just as she told the children. So it's almost a continuation in a sense of Borang, I would think. And maybe just one last thing I'll say is that if you see a statue of Our Lady of Banneux and then you see a statue of Our Lady of Lourdes, you might be confused because they both are very similar in appearance. Our Lady comes with a blue sash. The statue of Our Lady of Banneux has her a little slimmer than Our Lady of Lourdes. So that's kind of just an interesting thing. But there's great similarities and commonalities between these apparitions, whether it's Borang or even the most popular Lourdes.
Absolutely. We're talking today with Father Edward Looney about the apparitions that happened in 1933 in Banneux in Belgium. And I've been to that location, as have you, Father, and it's when you compare it to Lourdes, as long as we're making comparisons between Marian apparitions, it's quite a night and day difference between Lourdes and Banneux. Talk about being on site there. What is it like to be walking around that very wooded Marian shrine?
Yeah, so it's a very beautiful shrine, and they have, the little oratory where kind of the original commemoration. They have a bigger kind of auditorium chapel as well to accommodate the crowd. I went there right after I had visited Borang, actually. And one of the things I noticed then from that trip from Borang to Banneux is that Borang didn't have that many people visiting it. And one of the things I thought about is that I think that the message of Borang isn't maybe as appealing. That Mary talks about conversion of life and conversion, I've come for conversion, or I will convert sinners, Mary says. So I think there's something about the fact that Banneux, is very healing-centered. I walked away thinking, this is a greater attraction for Catholics in Belgium, in a sense, this shrine and what they offer, than what they have in Borang. It's not like Lourdes. It's a little different, of course, than Lourdes. Lourdes has its own flavor and feel. One of the very interesting things, too, about Banneux is that every day they've prayed the rosary at 7 o'clock since the Marian apparition. So there's been this perpetual rosary. And, I guess I don't know if I am able to say that because I don't know what they did during the COVID, if they suspended it or if they continued it. But uninterrupted, even during world wars, they gathered in that chapel to pray the rosary. That was kind of the living devotion post-apparition, which when they investigate an apparition, they say, is there fruit? Is there kind of this cultus? Is there the devotion of the people? And as people gathered there, that's what they had. That's what they saw, that people were praying and asking Mary's intercession.
Absolutely. We're talking today with Father Edward Looney about the apparitions at Banneux. And that's going to be the subject of the newest episode of Explore with the Miracle Hunter, which airs today at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And we'll be looking at those stunning visions of the Virgin Mary to 11-year-old Mariette Becco. Some beautiful footage and background and history as well. So we're so grateful to Father Edward for giving us some of this insight into this. And at Banneux, Mary appears under the title of the Virgin of the Poor. And one of the big names, perhaps, that you might say that found solace in this Marian title is Father Al Schwartz. He's a venerable in our Catholic Church, and he's been a subject of one of my They Might Be Saints programs on EWTN. Talk about the meaning of Our Lady as you detail in your book, How They Love Mary.
Yeah, so Father Al Schwartz, or Venerable Al Schwartz, interestingly, I learned his story through, a radio program such as this, and it was so intriguing because Kevin Wells was talking about him, and I said, I have to keep listening to this interview. I was so mesmerized by the life of Venerable Al Schwartz that led me to buy his book, that led me wanting to share about him in my book, How They Love Mary. But Father Al Schwartz was missionary at heart. He actually joined a missionary order in the United States, and I said, they don't live the charism of missionary life. They aren't poor. And so he finds an order in Belgium that he goes off and he joins. Well, what happens is that like a month before he's to be ordained a priest, he gets into a conflict with his superior, and his superior will no longer recommend him for ordination. But while he was in Belgium, he became very fond of this apparition site in Banneux. So he went there, he prayed, he surrendered his vocation to Our Lady. He said, Mary, if you want me to be a priest, you have to make it happen. And so he ended up finding a priest that was willing to ordain him. And he was ordained for a diocese, and then basically they said, we will send you to the missions. If that's what you want, we'll send you. So his life of ordination was fulfilled, but then the life that he lived, he would put like shacks to shame, in a sense. Like he lived so poor that he would get frostbite in his feet from being so cold in his house. It was just tremendous, his devotion to the poor, but he credits it all to the Virgin of the Poor, because she came as that one who identifies with the poor. And we hear that in the Magnificat too, Mary's prayer, that she talks about the poor. And so, the place of Banneux was a great place of surrender and solace, really, for Venerable Al Schwartz.
Absolutely, and filming that episode of They Might Be Saints was absolutely moving for me. I got to visit Chalco in Mexico, one of the poorest places in all of Mexico, and we saw the Villa de las Niñas that's set up by Father Al Schwartz, and even the nuns there, they pay some homage in some ways to the Virgin of the Poor, wearing a similar outfit to the Virgin as she appeared with that blue sash, at least in some moments there. So Father Al Schwartz, you detailed that in your book, How They Love Mary. People can pick that one up. And as we wrap up the interview today, Father Edward, I know that you're going on pilgrimage to Banneux at some point coming up. Tell us real quickly, if you can, how people can find out more about this pilgrimage and what are the places in Belgium that you'll be seeing.
Yeah, so I'm the pastor of a parish that is in Wisconsin, in the city of Brussels. And so there used to be a lot of people that would go to Belgium, like generations past. And so I wanted to offer an opportunity, especially for my parishioners to go, but anybody can go. But to go to Belgium, we're going to tour. We're going to go to Borang and Banneux. We're going to go to visit the tombs of some saints in Belgium, like St. Damien of Molokai and Leuven. We'll have some of the great beer that they have in Belgium as well. They're known for that. So it's going to be a wonderful experience of Catholic Belgium. I've done a documentary on the roadside chapels of northeastern Wisconsin, but there are roadside chapels in Belgium. That's where the Wisconsin ones found inspiration. So our hope is to visit a few of those roadside chapels in Belgium as well. So it's through Nativity Pilgrimages, and it's May 29th. We're leaving on Memorial Day, coming back on June 9th. And people can learn more, I guess, by checking out my social media page at Fr. Edward Looney. And I'll be sure to pin this link to the pilgrimage right at the top of the social media feed.
Wonderful. Well, we encourage people to find out more about that pilgrimage and also check out the book of Father Edward Looney, How They Love Mary. Thank you so much, Father Edward Looney, for joining us and telling us about the great background to the Virgin of the Poor in Banneux, Belgium. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And that was Father Edward Looney talking to us about the visions of Our Lady at Banneux in 1933 in Belgium. And that's all the time we have for today's show. If you missed any of this episode or want to catch up on past episodes, you can go to EWTN.com/radio, check out the audio archives, and download the free EWTN app. I'd like to thank our guest today, Father David Uribe, talking to us about Our Lady of the Snows, which airs next week on EWTN, Explore with the Miracle Hunter, and Father Edward Looney for talking to us about Banneux, the subject of tonight's program of Explore with the Miracle Hunter. And that new season, as I mentioned, starts today. We'll be looking at the background of Our Lady of Banneux. I'll be investigating a stunning Marian apparition in Belgium, where 11-year-old Mariette Becco witnessed 8 visions of the Virgin of the Poor who promised to intercede for the poor, sick, and suffering. Check out my new book, Science and the Miraculous, where I look at all the ways that the Catholic Church uses science to examine claims of miracles, including Eucharistic miracles. And you can join me on pilgrimage if you go to pilgrimages.com/miraclehunter. I'll be going to Poland on April 21st to May 1st We'll be going to Poland and Lithuania, and believe it or not, Poland is the #1 Catholic pilgrimage site in the entire world, even more popular than Italy these days. And so we'll be going to all the John Paul II sites, and we'll be going to Our Lady of Siluva in Lithuania, and Czestochowa, and various Eucharistic miracle sites. The two most recent occurring ones are there in Poland. So we'll be checking that one out, and go to pilgrimages.com/miraclehunter to sign up. I'd like to thank you for joining me today on Miracle Hunter, where from claims of healings and visions to the world's most inexplicable events, whether you're a believer or a skeptic, the truth is always worth a hunt. Talk to you next week.